Welcome to today's episode of Scrolling to Death. Today, you're going to hear a conversation with Meg Stuhmer. Meg's daughter was severely injured after she participated in a viral social media challenge called the Speed Challenge, which has been making its way around social media for at least 12 years. Meg's 14-year-old friend, who was a passenger in the car, did not survive. Moms like Meg share these stories to educate other parents, to spread awareness, and to put pressure on the social media companies to stop serving our children posts that can lead to dangerous and deadly behavior. They're not only recommending this dangerous content, they're profiting off of it. So through my conversation with Meg, you'll learn about the Speed Challenge and other online challenges. You'll learn how to prepare and protect your children from these harms and how we can start to stand up for our kids. And before we jump into my conversation with Meg, I want to let you know that this episode is sponsored by Bark Technologies, which is a parental controls company for parents who are looking to protect their children from online harms like drug content, like sextortion, and all the other harms that we talk about on this podcast. I'm so grateful that parents of today have resources like Bark to help make our kids' entire digital experience safer. Now on to my conversation with Meg. I just want to say hi. Thank you for being here. It's really great to meet you. We're here to talk about dangerous online challenges, how our kids are getting fed content that can lead to harmful or even deadly decisions and behavior. But first, I'd love to get to know you and your family a little bit. So tell me where you're from. Tell me about your kids. Love to know more.
I'm from Massachusetts originally,
Uh-huh.
but mostly Las Vegas, Nevada. I've got one amazing daughter.
Mm-hmm.
She is going to the college here in town. So Carly was into, she's one of those doers. I never had a problem with her wanting to stay home and watch TV all day or be on a
Mm-hmm.
screen all day or anything like that. Like that came easy.
Yeah.
She was in drama more for 8 years.
Mm.
We did different types of dance and tennis, things like that. Nothing ever was like her thing that she dreamed of like doing as an adult or anything like that, but she just
Yeah.
enjoyed life, adores her dog. We're always walking the dog, loves to go hiking, loves food, cooking. Well, no, I love cooking and she loves like sitting there
Eating your food. Yeah.
yeah. But
Oh.
just like well-rounded, but definitely somebody that likes to get out and do things.
Mm-hmm.
And then we moved to South Carolina um, midway through her eighth grade year because my dad had fallen, and so my dad was 6'1", and all four of his limbs were not working well. So we
Mm-hmm.
needed a lot of support to take care of him.
Yeah.
And his sister's family lived out there, and that's where he was. So we moved him. We were fortunate. We were able to move out as a family,
Mm-hmm.
move my dad into our home, and he passed away in May of 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Passed
Mm-hmm.
away in his own bed, like me rubbing his back.
Oh, Meg.
And it's like I happened to be in the room at the time, but his whole
Yeah.
family was around him, and
Yeah.
or not his whole family, but a good amount. And it was just a beautiful end of life for him. And then Carly was like desperate to get back to Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
This is where her home is, and and her dad and everything else. And so we moved back, or the plan was to move back, and she was going to move back on a Saturday morning.
Mm-hmm.
She finished her sophomore year of high school.
Mm-hmm.
She got straight A's.
Was that during COVID? This is now 2021 or 2020?
2021.
Yeah.
And so she had during her freshman year, she had in March is when we quarantined.
Right.
And then they were going back in person, and she tried it for a little bit, but in the public schools there, they were going back in person, but you had to teach online and you had to teach in person. And
Oh
so
God. Yeah.
kids that were in person, like you should just stay home if your teacher's gonna be online anyways, just stay home,
Yeah.
wear a mask, and
Mm-hmm.
there wasn't much of an advantage to going in person.
Right.
And so she only went for a little bit back in person, and then she stayed home,
Mm-hmm.
and she got straight A's. She took this like a really hard AP class, a lot of things. We were going out for walks every day. We're going to play tennis. We'd go to the beach and walk. And like as far as it went, like I don't think anyone was thriving in that time, but it was good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then she really had wanted to move back to Las Vegas for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was good. We were going to be able to move back to Las Vegas. And she and her friends chose to take the speed challenge that's being posted on all the social media platforms.
Mm-hmm.
And they went out. We actually had the neighbors over. The neighbors have been amazing with my dad and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So we had neighbors over for a champagne toast. and then everyone had left. I had said goodnight to her around 11 o'clock at night. And my brother's family was in, they live out of the country. So they were in, and they were going to take her to Asheville for this little like 2-day trip. And then she was going
Mhm.
to come back and she was going to move back to Vegas. I was going to stay and teach summer school. And then I was going to move back in 6 weeks.
Mhm.
And that's how I went to bed on June 16th.
Mhm.
And then at 5:23, there's two coroners and two deputies at my door. And and the three girls had gone out, got the car up. I don't know for sure, like I didn't develop it or anything else, but getting online and researching it and just
Mhm.
watching her feeds, not mine, because I don't get that kind of stuff because
Yeah.
I'm an adult.
Right. Right.
It seems like they try to get the kids to go 130 miles per hour. And then the next goal would be 140, 150. And then to me, it jumps like 180 and it goes over 200 miles per hour.
Oh my God.
And so, and when you're watching it, it's just like these different reels, like depending on if you're watching it on Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, where I made the connection. And I made the connection back in July of 2021
Mhm.
because you can't do anything, like you're paralyzed and you're just like, how did this happen?
Mhm.
Like, how did this happen? And so I just started, I hadn't looked at her phone for like a week or two following the accident. And then I just started looking at everything. And I was looking a lot at Snapchat because she was using that. The kids like to snap each other.
Mhm.
They don't send text messages. They don't call as much as they used to.
Right. Right.
You know, they use Snapchat, they use Instagram,
Mhm.
and then they watch TikToks and YouTubes all day,
Mhm.
and it's one thing, you're aware of how much time your kids are spending online. You're aware of like what devices they have, or sometimes you're not, but you're not aware that the algorithm that they're being fed is
Yeah.
so different than the algorithm that you're being fed.
Yes.
When I got on her phone, I spent a lot of time, and Snapchat was the one where I saw it first because you have to, in order to read the messages, and I went back
Mhm.
months under messages because I wanted to see where this influence came from.
Mhm.
My family, I drove a Hyundai, her dad, a Civic. Like,
Mhm.
we're not fast car, we're not fast and furious people. Like there was no
Mhm.
speed culture in my background.
Yeah.
I never once heard Carly mention a fast car or a car that she liked or a color of
Mhm.
a car. Like I've never seen her. So I'm a middle school teacher. Like I was up on a lot of the things that
Yeah.
you know about to protect your kids, but I was not aware of the speed filter and the speed algorithms and the speeding challenges.
Mhm.
And then I got in, I was reading the messages and I'm looking for peer influence. And at one point, I was just, this reel came through, and it was this pouty young girl sitting on a bed and looking like some kind of a filter was on it.
Mhm.
And then when my boyfriend says he's driving safe, and then it flips and I think it was 150 miles per hour.
Oh my God.
Now it's starting to all like, I don't remember which one was which,
Yeah.
but that, and then there was something else, and I want to say it was speed related as well. And then there's this commercial, Teslas, more affordable than ever, 200 miles per hour. So I
Whoa.
asked a friend, and this was back in 2021. I've had friends that have driven Teslas for years. I was like, y'all get advertisements to go over 200 miles per hour. You're adults that buy Teslas.
Mhm.
And to this day, not a single friend has reported back that they get any level of speed. They get advertisements from Tesla. They simply don't get over 200 miles per hour. So
Okay.
it's rated.
Okay, wait, so let me back up for a second because we didn't so Carly survived the accident, correct?
Carly survived the accident. Carly
Okay.
and her friend in the front seat survived, and the little girl in the back seat did not. She died instantly. It hit a tree, and so you think about it, and I'm not here to share anybody else's story, but like there's three families that said goodnight to the daughters that night, and one woke up to finding out that their daughter wasn't going to wake up.
Oh my
And I can't imagine how I just can't.
No, no. I'm so, so sorry that that happened. And the girls probably just thought they were doing something fun. I mean, when you see something over and over in fun videos with filters, with jokes, like you think you're just trying something fun, right?
It seemed normal when I spent, and then I ended up spending a few months kind of investigating this, and it seemed normal. I
Hmm.
would have thought that when the lights go out, that's what you do. Not that everyone does it, like,
Hmm.
but it
Yeah.
seemed normal to take your parents' car and go get some fast food,
Hmm.
or take your parents' car and or maybe your car, I don't know,
Yeah.
and try to hit 130 miles per hour. But you know the difference between taking your parents' car out and going and get fast food
Hmm.
versus your parents' car out and trying to hit 130 miles per hour.
That was instigated by social media being an algorithm being pushed to these young girls.
There's no doubt, and I can't prove it. I don't have the evidence, and I'm not a, but I'm trying to get the story out ahead of that. There's
Yeah.
no doubt that it's going to come out. But like I said, I'm a middle school teacher. And when I saw the way that the information was being pushed onto her platforms versus mine,
Hmm. Hmm.
there's no doubt that it's somehow they're making the money off of their car advertisements, and that's how they make their money is their advertisements. And how are they getting these kids to be interested in the car advertisements, this sexy speeding stuff that's going on, and
Okay.
it's disgusting.
Okay. So to be very clear, within videos on, so this was Instagram likely, within videos on Instagram or Snapchat, where was the Tesla ad?
The Tesla was definitely on Snapchat because
Okay.
I remember I was on Snapchat because I was reading the chats.
Okay.
And that's it. I wouldn't have even watched it, except I had to watch it in order to read her chats. You have to, this is what the kids go through. You have to watch their algorithm or their whatever, their reels and their advertisements, and then you can go back into the chat feature.
No
But you
way.
have to,
I
in
didn't
order,
know that.
that was
Okay.
my, and I might be dumb, you know what I mean? But that was my experience in being
Okay.
on my choice code.
Yeah. I mean, it's your experience, but that sounds like something they would do.
Mhm.
So Snapchat was recommending content about a speed challenge to your daughter's account. And then directly after, there was an ad, a Tesla ad for a fast car about the speed
Over
of the
200 miles
Tesla.
per hour. Over 200. Like I remember over 200 or drives 200 miles per hour or over 200. I forget what it was, but 200 was the mile per hour that was normalized.
Oh my God, Meg.
Yeah, it's
That's so wrong. Okay, wait. How is Carly doing today? Is she okay?
she, she survived,
Yeah.
like she's she's a good kid, and she's fighting. She's a fighter, and she's fighting, and we had a lot of support
Mhm.
from a little girl that passed away. Her family has been amazing.
Oh.
Um, it's she's in school, she actually most recently sought out her own mental health resource because there's not a lot of mental health resource available um, for this sort of thing.
Yeah.
She sought out her own recently, and she's gone through different programs and everything. There's been a takeaway, but nothing has fully. Um, she's a different person than she was before that,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
you know, and the reason I'm sharing today is because if I had seen this interview, or I've done other interviews, like if I'd seen any of these interviews, I would have known. And I feel like I talked to her about so many things, and
Mhm.
speeding was not on my radar.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so my two big takeaways are I don't want to be ashamed, and I don't want, like, yes, my daughter made a bad choice, but would she have made that choice if she had not received all of this information and all of this persuasion? And they're profiting in the billions, and they're not regulated. They're not
Mhm.
changing it. I know I kind of go down different rabbit
Yeah,
holes,
that's
but
okay.
something that happened last summer, her friends, I'm trying to get the dialogue going, and
Mhm.
they were, I think, 18 and 19, and then 20. They started showing me on TikTok like all the speeding videos that they got,
Mhm.
and we were having a conversation, and they said to me, but because they were telling me about their friend that has a souped up, I don't know, a car that costs like $30,000,
Mhm.
not that any car needs to be speeding, but definitely not built for speed. But
Right.
then he's added some things.
Yeah.
And where I live, there's we've got a speedway,
Mhm.
I forget what it's called, a speeding track,
Mhm.
uh, 45 minutes in the northwest away from me. But he would go around in that area. That it's an open highway. So my daughter's accident was on a dark country road, and that's come up a lot. Like, where do you speed? And when you look at the ads, you speed on dark mountain highways, curvy. You speed on dark country roads. You're less likely to be pulled over by a police officer, is my understanding in talking to kids. You also speed on the highway, and as long as you're going fast enough, you cannot get pulled over. That is what these kids are understanding.
Oh my
So they're not
God.
scared of dying. They're not scared of killing somebody else or really hurting somebody else. They're scared of getting pulled over, or they're like, that's the concern.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so then they make the decision to go speeding, which it would have never come up, I don't believe, in my family's
No.
like if we were a family that was into that, like I would have talked to her and her dad would have talked to her and we would have there just would have been some background. She didn't know anything about speeding other than what she learned
No.
online things, and how was I supposed to know that was going to come through to her?
Yeah. Social media companies promote these any challenges really, and it doesn't matter if they're dangerous because it gets a lot of engagement on the platform and makes them money. And it's often, I've learned, difficult to get these dangerous challenge videos taken down. So, are you finding that this speed challenge still exists on social media today?
That's where I got off track. So absolutely. And anybody can find that, not by even looking online. Just talk to kids and find out if they've ever seen a speeding reel. I was a few months ago, I was talking to a fourth grader and he was laughing about something he'd seen on YouTube. And this kid about close to him in age had stolen his parents' car and gone to McDonald's. That's not the speeding challenge, but it's normalizing using a car as a
Mhm.
toy, you know?
Wow.
And then,
In
like I said,
4th
last summer,
grade.
it was a huge social, having this open dialogue, and it would make me sick at times. Like the kids would explain to me, I don't know that much about speeding, but this guy that's doing it, he's good at it. Like he comes from a family where they drive fast cars and everything else, and he makes money off of it and this and that. And that's a
Mm.
big thing with kids. They always look at how popular they are on the social media platforms. And then they always assume that there's money tied to that. And probably there is in certain, in a lot of the situations, but they don't really look at it's not realistic. It's a false reality.
Mhm.
Something else today I would like to say is because I think we're talking to an audience or talking with an audience that's becoming more aware.
Yeah.
I don't believe, even if you're aware of the speed challenge, they're going to find something else. You
Mhm.
know, I
Mhm.
don't believe there's any way to completely know what's being sent to your kids unless you start having a conversation where you're not monitoring or anything else, but you and your kids go someplace like Carly and I went down near Las Vegas Boulevard. So
Mhm.
there's strip clubs and there's all these shooting ranges and you can shoot in a machine gun and everything else. Carly has never expressed an interest in anything as far as gun control goes. And
Mhm.
our family, again, we don't lobby on anything with that.
Mhm.
And I have family members that have guns, and I'm not. It's
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
it's not a thing like a big topic.
Yeah.
So we were down there for a couple of hours. We come back. My TikTok account sends me something about hormone replacement therapy, small business ideas, and something about Roe versus what was before Roe versus Wade got overturned. So
Mhm.
something political. None of these things I've looked into, right?
Mhm.
But they like none of them. It's not like none. I was not interested in any of those three things. But that's my age, my demographic. That's what they chose to send me
Yeah.
for Carly, and it was literally in her For You on TikTok. They sent her this gun control ad. Then I have it recorded, and it was and at the time she was 17. Okay, so it was a police officer pulled over these two teenage boys, and it looks like a legitimate pullover initially, right? But
Mhm.
then they start talking about, do you have guns? I have guns, gun control, and it was mocking gun control. So they're spitting their guns, they're flipping their guns. To me, it was a real police car, real, like it looked like real police initially when I first
Mm.
started watching it, right?
Mhm.
And then it's just a joke. It's to make them laugh. But gun control isn't a joke. You know what I
Right.
mean? And
Yeah.
why you're saying to a 17-year-old. It's interesting what they're choosing to send to a 17-year-old versus
Did she get those videos about gun control right after you guys had a conversation out loud about guns?
no, but we
Okay.
drove down to right by Las Vegas Boulevard.
Okay.
We were very close to where you can shoot a machine gun. Or an
Okay.
automatic machine, not,
Yeah.
I don't automatic. And then just down by Las Vegas Boulevard,
Right.
So it goes to show that when they think they have a 17-year-old attention versus
Mhm.
you know, an adult woman, what
Mhm.
they're going to send.
Yeah, and to know, especially TikTok, they're pinging your location, they're listening to your conversations, they know more about you than you know. And so it's possible that TikTok had known that she was near multiple locations that had shooting ranges, and that then it was going to serve, she might be interested in that, so it's going to serve her content related to that.
That's exactly what happened because I've
Okay.
been on her own a lot on all the platforms, and I'd never seen anything about gun control.
Okay. Yeah. But it's not going to serve it to you because you have a developed brain. You're old enough to, already have your mind made up on what is going on there, but they can influence these young children with
Mhm.
content like that.
Like you would never take your child to a restaurant and let them give your child, and by child I mean your 16-year-old, your 20-year-old child.
Mhm.
You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Yeah.
Like that you would never let them give your like a drug menu, a speeding, like
I
everything
know.
that's up there, like drugs, cigarettes, alcohol, and then you like a really nice, delicious, beautiful menu. You would
Mhm.
never do that, but we're
Right.
allowing it
Mhm.
with our communication platforms.
Yeah, and Meg, like you're right in that most parents don't understand that that's happening. That parents are getting one thing that's less harmful, and then children are getting this harmful, toxic feed of
Mhm.
stuff that gets a reaction from them, often a negative reaction, but addicts them and causes them often to make bad decisions. And so, what would you recommend parents tell their kids to try to protect them from something like this happening to them?
I think don't tell them anything. Just
Okay.
open the dialogue,
Yeah. Okay.
But one of the dialogues to have is what defines addiction? Because I would have said that Carly was not addicted before
Mhm.
that. I
Right.
would have said that she wasn't interested in speeding before that.
Mhm.
I realized that she was susceptible to the like eat less than 500 calories a day, which is another big thing on social media platforms.
Yeah.
Um, and we had dealt with that, and that one didn't take her down.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so with that, I was that parent before June of 2021. I was the parent that would have thought like, oh, I would wake up to hear that other kids in the neighborhood had taken the speed challenge,
Mhm.
and this had happened to them.
Mhm.
So my advice to parents is, and not that they would need to hear advice from me, because I know a lot of times people feel like, look at this, like, why would this mom give advice?
You've learned so much, Meg. Like you've learned
I
so much and talked to so many parents in the
so many
last
people,
few
yes.
years. So you deserve to be listened to when it comes to this stuff. So
The
please
biggest
share.
thing is I would have believed that this would have never happened to my family.
Mhm.
I would believe that we're susceptible to other things. Just be aware that there's things out there that you're not aware of, and keep the conversation open,
Mhm.
and encourage your kids instead of putting restrictions. I almost feel like your kids can share things, because even if they get something gross, it doesn't mean that they asked for it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then you can navigate it. And what if they're a little bit interested? Like, what if they get something a little bit more on the porn side of things and they're interested? Have a conversation with them, because if you don't and they tap on it, it's just going to go in a direction that you don't need it to go into.
Yeah.
These algorithms are horrific.
Yeah.
The other thing I've learned recently is I've been practicing sharing my story and not getting off track, which I don't think I'm
No.
doing a great job of today.
No, you are. You're fine.
But I realized this: I'm not sharing my story, my daughter's story, my family story.
Mhm.
I'm sharing social media story because
Mhm.
they are writing it. And that's the biggest takeaway. Right now they are completely writing the story. So you don't know what they're writing, and your kids don't either.
Mhm. Yeah. And they don't mind harming children.
They profit from it.
Right.
Yeah.
So they prefer to harm children.
And
So
if you look at how many people, it's like it's Marky Mark and his money grubbing bunch, and it's maybe 10 people. Because I mean, how many platforms this is like, I mean, how many really powerful, influential platforms are there?
mhm. I
It
mean,
has
it's TikTok, Snapchat, YouTube, maybe Discord, X. Like, there's really only a handful that
I think
are,
it's five. Like I was right around five. Yeah.
yeah,
And then at the top of that chain, there's really only a couple people that are self-regulating,
yeah,
and they're ruling the world, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. I'm sorry, I should have mentioned Instagram and Facebook. Yeah,
that's,
Meta in general.
that's why I didn't say the exact number. I'm like, I'm going to forget.
Yeah, yeah, but it's not a lot, and
It's a
they're
definite.
making decisions that are harming children. And there are fixes. And okay, so let's talk about to end here.
Mhm.
Parents can only do so much. Like, we can't prepare our kids for everything. We don't even know what they're going to be served. So, how do we make social media safer for kids? Are you supporting legislation? Like, what can we do on a governmental level or other areas that can help this problem? Meg and I are about to get into some really important legislation for keeping kids safe online, but I wanted to pause here to talk about a tool that could save your child's life, and that is the Bark phone or the Bark app. Bark is a company that goes way beyond device mirroring. They offer advanced AI to scan texts, scan social media, images, videos, and audio for threats like these dangerous online challenges, drug content, cyberbullying, even child sexual abuse material. The harms of social media are scary, but tools like Bark can give you peace of mind. The Bark phone is the most customizable kids phone with text and social media monitoring built in. It's literally the safest option. But if you're going to go with an Android or an iPhone for your child, please consider layering on the Bark app. They have high-tech parental monitoring that scans their activities for harmful content. You can create screen time schedules, block certain websites and apps, and a ton more. Check the episode description for more information. And now let's get back to my conversation with Meg.
I'm a huge COSA, Kids Online Safety Act
Mm-hmm.
advocate. I think if you have any questions about it, reach out to somebody who you trust. I've actually lobbied on behalf of COSA, and when I
Mm-hmm.
when I look at how it's twisted, you have to realize that the people that are fighting COSA are the ones that have the most power in communication. They
Mm-hmm.
control communication,
Yep.
which means they control elections. I mean, depending on your opinion, but like they don't control elections. They have a huge impact and influence on elections, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can't always go to your elected official, unfortunately, because there's a pressure there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like we've got to get the communications out there, but reach out to somebody. Definitely support something, whether it's COSA, whether it's any other legislations. There's absolutely no reason that this is still going on today. Something else in my research, the first time social media was sued for the speed challenge was back in 2012.
Mm-hmm.
Then
Wow.
I, so maybe, yeah,
Wow.
we're in 2024 and
Wow.
we're not very much closer. I mean, there's definitely no regulation. Some of the laws are changing where they could be held accountable for certain things, or not the laws, but some of the fights are changing, I should say.
Yeah.
But I read a lot of the litigation, and what social media always, and every company or the gaming company like Discord or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
what they cite is that it's under CDA 230. It's
Right.
their freedom of expression.
Yeah.
What they're doing is not a freedom of expression. Like they're hiding behind it, but it's
Mm-hmm.
not.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So when they fight regulation, they're saying it's my right to do this. It is not their right. It's immoral and it's killing and it's harming and it's destroying.
Yeah. And wow. Okay. So 2012, they've known about the speed challenge, that it's killed people since 2012. And
And I
they,
call it the speed challenge based on like, that's how I looked at it when I was like a 17-year-old girl or 16, 17-year-old girl looking at a
yeah.
phone.
Yeah.
Not that I am, but I was looking at like what they were sending my daughter.
Right.
I call it a challenge. They don't title it speed challenge.
Okay. I'm right.
Mhm.
But they are like romanticizing speeding, and
Mhm.
they're encouraging kids to film themselves speeding and showing right how fast they're going. And the filter you mentioned, so I want to just touch on too, the filter on Snapchat
Mhm.
around the speed challenge or around these speed videos. Can you explain that, what the filter was doing?
So there's two things. There's an actual, which it's been removed since June of 2021, not related to the accident though, but it was an actual thing where you could turn the speed filter on, and then it would track your speed,
Tell you
and
how fast you're going?
then and then I forget which one has like scores and which one's like kids are being graded 24/7 on these online
Yeah.
platforms.
Yeah.
So kids want to be more popular. Like that's something,
Yeah.
from the beginning of time. Like you want to be liked.
Yeah.
And so they look for likes, they look for increased scores, they look for all this stuff. So when you take these different challenges and you post it, all of a sudden your popularity goes way up,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And so that started, I forget when it originally came out. And if you look at the revenue, at one point I had it all in writing.
Mhm.
Snap's revenue went up like crazy. They went from being like a whatever $1 million to $1 billion, like multi-billion
Mhm.
dollar company.
Mhm.
And then when I looked at like some of their financials that I could access online,
Mhm.
nothing internal, but 99% of my understanding is 99% of their money is made from their advertisements.
Mhm.
So
Right.
it's good for
Right.
kids, but they have to get the companies that have money
Mhm.
to pay them for those advertisements. So then they have to
Mhm.
base their algorithms on what's going to addict them, but then also make them susceptible to the advertisements. Like
Right.
it's malicious. And
Yeah.
the Surgeon General said one time, if you take like MIT grads and you take, that top business people and this powerhouse and
Mhm.
you pin them against a parent and a child, and he didn't say it exactly like this, but it was
Mhm.
something like take this entity and you pin them against this. It is the definition of an unfair fight. That's exactly what it is, which is why we need to come together.
Yeah, and it is an unfair fight. And you're right to say that a lot of politicians are in bed with the tech companies, being supported by the tech companies, influenced by the tech companies to vote against COSA, for example, or different bills. But every parent I've talked to who's lost a child or gotten a child harmed through social media supports COSA. That's all I need to know. And so I do encourage parents to reach out to their officials. It takes probably 3 minutes to even reach out to both your senators and your House and your representatives in the House through their websites. Just do that, and then also, yeah, talk to your trusted adults around you about these issues and get on the same page, right?
And also with that, whether you're more liberal or more conservative,
Hmm.
it's a bipartisan push, and
Yeah.
it's also like being fought by like a a huge force. But if you can reach out to somebody, if you have a question, if you're a liberal and you feel like, hey,
Hmm.
maybe this is going to target the LGBT.
Yeah. TQ. Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
I
I
didn't
know.
last night. So,
Yeah.
community, like reach out and find out, is it, or is that
Hmm.
just something that's been spun
Hmm.
to lose support?
Yeah.
If you're conservative and you feel like it's going to sway elections and things
Hmm.
like that, that's what I've
Hmm.
heard on that side. Is it, reach out to a legal mind,
Yeah.
not an Instagram or not a TikTok or not a YouTube or not a Twitter or tweeter,
Yeah.
whatever you
Yeah, yeah. And it's hard to know what's true because there are full blogs and websites by big trade associations that are funded by big tech trying to convince you that it is going to limit speech of LGBTQ peoples. So it's hard to know, but and I do. How about this? Ask me, and I have lots of contacts, and I've been thinking about having another recording with Laura Marquez Garrett, who's an attorney, also a member of the LGBTQ community, and
Mhm.
she doesn't have a problem with COSA. They originally didn't support it, but they've made some changes, and she's fully on board with COSA. So I'm convinced that it's not going to restrict anyone's speech, that it's going to protect children. But I understand the confusion when there's kind of influences coming from both sides. To close out, is there anything else that we didn't touch on that you want to share with parents who are listening?
No, and I love your idea of bringing Laura back on because I feel like she
Mhm.
clarified a lot of things for me.
Yes. Yeah.
I think we need to make change, and it should have already happened, but this
Yeah.
idea that they're going to drag it out and drag it out and drag it out
Hmm. Right.
is not acceptable.
No. Meg, thank you so much for sharing your story. Give love to Carly. We're thinking of her and of the other girls who were affected by this, and all of the thousands or potentially millions of children who have participated in the speed challenge and potentially been harmed by it, or have yet to be. I wanted to touch on this and I didn't yet. Is it helpful to report any dangerous challenges that we see online, or encourage our children if they see a harmful challenge to report it? Is that helpful?
Apparently, I work with I never give up.
Yeah.
I work with a huge network of parents, and they're
Hmm.
reporting daily, some of them, and some of them since 2015.
Yep.
You know,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
I mean, so it's heartbreaking. It does not seem to be working yet.
Yeah. Okay.
However, you don't ever give up on your kids,
No. No.
So you report every single one of them. And like I said, try to both look at your phones because
Hmm.
they are tracking locations, and it's not. I feel like kids feel like, oh, it's going to look like because I pressed on this. Now it's going to look like I'm weird or I'm,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, the judgment is.
Yeah.
Um, try to both look at your phones, at the same time. You'll
Yeah.
see that you're both being marketed to in different ways,
Yeah.
and they're not being right to kids,
No, they're
and young
not.
adults and 20 somethings.
Yeah. Yeah. All the way through adolescence.
Yeah.
Okay. Meg, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you. Okay. Let me.